Welcome to the Thunder Hour Podcast, hosted by Trey and James Hamilton, and produced by Leif Dietrich.
All right, welcome back to Thunder Hour Podcast Series Recap Edition. This is our first postseason episode. It's great to be here, joined alongside my dad, James, as always. It's been a few days now since the Thunder advanced to round two, the semifinals of the Western Ontario Super Hockey League, following a 3-1 series victory over the Strathroy Jets. So for the third year in a row, the Tillsonburg Thunder beat the Strathroy Jets in the first round of the playoffs. Strathroy gave us a little bit of a run there in the middle of that series, but from start to finish, I felt like the Thunder were definitely the better team. We'll get a little bit more, obviously, into details about that. But, Dad, how are you doing today? And what were your just basic thoughts on the series?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. I think Tillsonburg did have control of the series for the most part. I think because they were kind of in that funk going into the postseason, it took them a little while to get their footing. But I personally thought Game 3 of that series was like the most dominant performance they've had. Showed what they're capable of when they're playing at all aspects of the game, offense, defense, and goaltending, and special teams contributing as well. So, like I said, I didn't really feel too nervous, and it was a good test for them in the first round. I think it's probably what they needed to get going as we advance deeper into the second round of the Washoe playoffs here.
I agreed, fully. I thought it was, a series where the Thunder were the better team. The lines 1 through 4 defensively. I think anybody could have saw that. It's Strathroy. Well, no slag on them. They obviously were still one of the top 8 teams. They were able to make the postseason, and they had a really, really good goalie in Evan DeBrouwer this year. But I just didn't think depth-wise they were able to keep up with us. And they struggled to score all year, and we were one of the better teams for goals against. So I think that, you combine all those factors together. I wouldn't say the series went exactly as we all predicted, but, I thought Game 1, the Thunder got the lead, and then they went down, and then Fitzmaurice and Baker with the 2 huge goals in the third. Obviously, one to tie, one to take the lead. I think that really set the tone for the series. And then, Game 2, we go and, the boys kind of laid a little bit of an egg in Game 2. Obviously, a 5-0 final for Strathroy. And as two guys who have played hockey, been around hockey our whole lives, Dad, just had one of those feelings of a game where nothing went right from the puck drop for the Thunder. But, they were able to bounce back in 3 and 4. 3 at home, 4 in Strathroy Gemini. And I thought, they did what they had to do to come out on top. And, here we go, moving on to the second round. So
yeah, like you said, it wasn't, ideal. But like I said before, they were struggling going into the postseason. So it was good to try to get their game back to where they needed it to be. And as you said, Game 1, first period, here come the Thunder. 3-1 at the end of 1. Oh, we're going to ride off into the sunset. And then before you know it, it's 5-4 Strath heading into the third. So we kind of had reverted to some of our making some poor decisions and some mistakes, with the puck. But as the series went on, I did feel that they finally did kind of get their mojo back. Like we said, I don't even know what Game 2 was. Like, that was so strange. They were flat right out of the gate. Passes were not crisp. Power play was off. Sags let in a few that, he would have liked to have back. Mm-hmm. It just was, like you said, from watching the game live, it was like they just don't have it tonight. But they were able to show Game 3, like I talked about earlier. I thought that was their most complete game I've seen in probably a month and a half, right? They were very clean, other than Razor had one at the very beginning there that he kind of fooled him and dipped on him a bit. He would have had a shutout in the playoffs. He played phenomenally. The team kept a lot of the high pressure chances outside, so he wasn't left making 10 bellers all night. It was a great game all around, a 4-1 final. And then of course Game 4 came around. Strathroy's on their last legs at that point. They're at home. They're going to give them everything they've got, and they did. They came out. They battled really hard. I was proud of the Thunder just to stay at it. It was a similar to Game 1 where they were down 5-4 heading into the third. We were able to tie it up with Fitzy this time at 5. And then my boy Kyle, he kind of had us scared for a bit there because old Kyle Breezer had a wide open net that could have given us a 6-5 lead.
Brzezinski, what are you doing?
We love you though, buddy. But anyways, we made it a little bit more interesting. Had to go into overtime where, as we both know, there was a delay of game penalty called. And well, our buddy old Cootsy there, he did what he had to do.
Yep.
Brandon Kudo finished off the one-timer over to Brower, and away we go. We're off to round 2. Great excitement from the Tillsonburg fans down in Strathroy. Like you said, I feel bad for them in some ways, but it's hockey, 3 years in a row we've been able to eliminate them and move on. And, like you said before, kudos to them. They had a good series. They gave it everything they had. But I agree with you at the end of the day, just Tillsonburg, I think, is the top 4 lines, and 6D, I just think they're stronger overall than Strathroy. And in my opinion, I'm a bit biased, but the better team won.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. All the points there on, like you said, Game 3 being our most complete effort. Game 4 going in and then having this weird back and forth game. Tillsonburg takes the lead. Strathroy jumps back into it. Strathroy takes the lead. Tillsonburg ties it. Tillsonburg takes the lead. Strathroy ties it. Goes up 5-4. Like, it was just one of those games where you felt like every shot could go in. And it wasn't because of bad goaltending at all. It was just because it was one of those games, right, where both teams capitalized, on a majority of their offensive chances. And then once the Thunder tied it at 5, I personally felt Strathroy started to kind of let their foot off the gas a little bit, started to play a little bit of turtle, because they knew, right, if you give up one more goal, it's a 5-5 tie, under 10 minutes to go. Next goal is going to win that game more than likely, and it did. And, like I said, they hung in there in the series. They ended up getting the 1 win, but the Thunder proved to everybody that they were the better team, I think. And, again, Coots, there it is, Cootsy with the 2-goal game and the overtime winner. Really picked up his play there in Game 4, and we're looking forward to him as we head to the next round. He's going to be a big X factor, Dad, and we'll kind of switch gears, talk about what we expected and versus what happened there in the Washel first round. First series I'll talk about for us, Stratford and Elora, another three-peat for those two teams, so to speak, 3 years in a row meeting. Funny situation, Stratford was down 4-2 with under a minute to play in Game 1, and we were sitting here watching it on our TV, and we said, I think that if Elora's able to get this done, this is going to be a weird series. They could steal a game in Stratford, and all of a sudden they're up 2-1 or whatever at that situation, right? But if some butts are candy and nuts, because Stratford scored 2 goals in the last minute with their net empty, and then Ray Robbins, their captain, won it in overtime, and then Stratford, Dad, just foot on the gas, took that series over and won in a sweep. So how did you feel? Like, what was your view of that series and versus what ended up happening?
Yeah, well, I know when we talked last time, we didn't know it would be Elora. We kind of presumed with the play-in series that they would be the one facing Stratford. I didn't really expect Elora to give them much of a challenge. When we came home that night and saw they were actually down 4-2, I was kind of like, wow. But to me, I kind of figured 3 at the most 4 games. Stratford's just kind of on a mission right now, and I think Elora playing that play-in tournament and trying to fit that in before the real playoffs began kind of just wore them out. And again, the better team won. I don't think they were able to dress Stevens for at least one of those games. Elora, as well as Peckham, I don't believe was in the lineup. If he was at all, I can't really remember. I didn't get to watch it all, but so they seemed a bit shorthanded, and I think they were kind of running on fumes by then. And the Irish are the defending champions. They've turned it on at the end of the season, and I think they just continued to show that. So for me personally, it wasn't really a big surprise. The 1 versus 8, I think the better team obviously won that in convincing fashion.
Yep, I agree. A sweep is a sweep, right? And we'll switch it up to the next series, which also ended in a sweep. The 3-seeded Tilbury Bluebirds played the 6-seeded Woodstock Lakers. Before I get right into this series, just want to say congratulations to Kevin who was named the back-to-back league MVP. So congrats to Kevin. Obviously, he put up a monster season, and we got to see a couple of his really exciting games this year. One of them in Stratford where he took it over, and they ended up winning. He got the hat trick that game. Lakers went into the Allman and beat them there. Friday night 7:30 game. And obviously, like I said, he's a heck of a hockey player. But as we talk about this series, what we lined up and what myself and Andrew Rogers talked about on his show prior to the postseason as a playoff preview was, do we think Woodstock had a deep enough team to be able to match up with the checking line and the fourth line of a team like Tilbury? And we said no. All three of us said, I don't think, and it's no offense to them, in Woodstock. They still have a very good team, but we just didn't think they had the skill or the drive to be able to match up with the Tilbury Bluebirds. And although they did give them a good fight in Game 3 at Southwood Arena, Reeves Community Center, Red Pad over there, it ended a 4-3 final. Tilbury dominated Game 1 and 2 down in Tilbury, and then they took care of business in Game 3. You know what? It was very similar to the Thunder series in that way that the closing game was tight. When you actually look at it, outside of the Alveston Petrolia game, which we'll get to in a minute, the Stratford Game 3, the Tillsonburg and Strathroy Game 4, and the Game 3 in the Tilbury Woodstock series, all clinching games for the better teams in the matchup. Were all tight games, and the better teams pulled out in front. So, ends in a sweep. Tilbury moves on to the second round, the 3 seed, and I think it's just safe to say it's kind of what not just us, but a lot of people expected.
Yeah, like you said, Woodstock had a great season. They picked it up a lot in their first season in Woodstock after relocating from Plattsville. They have nothing to hang their heads on. It's like hockey's kind of like boxing. I've said that before, and it just was a matchup that didn't suit them well.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the matchup going into it. We both talked about it in the last podcast that we thought Tilbury would convincingly win, and in games 1 and 2 down in Tilbury, they did what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an intimidating barn for road teams to play in. The fans get right into it. The ice apparently is really, really fast down there. I mean, I haven't got privilege to play in Tilbury's ice, but they say it moves quick down there. And I mean, they're just the better team, like you said, 4 lines wise. We both said if you can shut down the top line of Woodstock, you're going to have a strong chance of defeating them, and that's what Tilbury was able to do.
Yep. Tilbury, they play a tough game, and we'll obviously talk a little bit more about Tilbury in a few minutes here. But just, a quick thought about them. They're a tough team to play. They have a very talented goaltender in Ryan Polidori. They have a very good top line. They added guys this year like Benga. They re-signed Chigritsev halfway through the year. And I know they lost some guys like Ryan Roth this past year, but they're returning guys like Cravatin and Jennings and Winkworth. These guys are good hockey players, and they're a deep team, and they're fast. They play together. They play a really good system, and I think that they deserve to be in that top 4 team conversation, obviously. And I think that they proved a lot of people right, and at the same time, it's nothing to hang your head on if you're Woodstock. It was a pretty good first year for the Lakers organization in Woodstock. Zare put a lot better of a team on the ice than he did last year. They were competitive. They hung in there. There was a few points in the season where, if they didn't lose, they had a couple of 4 or 5 game losing streaks in there. Right out of the gate, they started 0-5. If they could have went, let's say 2-3 or 3-2 in that stretch, they could have been right up there in the top 5 seeds, maybe even getting the top 4 finish. So obviously a lot of things to look forward to in Woodstock. I think if they add some defensive pieces, build off of the team they have right now, I think Ben Edwards is a capable enough goaltender. I think he played well this year. And like I said, obviously you have the league MVP. It's like having Connor McDavid. You're going to be competitive every year when you have a guy like Kevin Hu on the team. So nothing to hang your head on. And congrats to Woodstock. To Tilbury for advancing to the next round of the Washel playoffs. I think they did a great job, and we're looking forward to who they're playing next. But first, we'll get to finally recapping the first round. The heavyweight fight, the one everybody thought was going 5, including us, and unfortunately it didn't for entertainment's sake, but it still was a heck of a series, Dad. Petrolia and Alveston, the Battle of Petrolia Line, the Battle of Lambton County, they have a bunch of names for it. The Bees and the Squires, the veteran leadership-led team, this old group of guys that have been together as a team for 10, 15 years. WOAA former champions, a great hockey team, a great hockey town in Petrolia versus the new guys, the young, the fast, the opportunistic Alveston Killer Bees who got hot right at the end of the season after they had some struggles mid-season. And it was a series that both of us deep down inside and behind closed doors definitely thought Petrolia was going to come out in 4 or 5 with the win, and Alveston went and proved us wrong, Dad. Alveston gets the series win 3-1, including winning a couple games in Petrolia there. And they lost the first game in Petrolia. They won the third game in Petrolia. How did you feel that series went, Dad? We had the chance to watch a majority of those games. I was honestly caught a little bit off guard.
Yeah, obviously game 1 came out just like I thought. Petrolia kind of went around, took care of business. They had the heavyweights out there throwing the haymakers and big scraps going on. But kudos to Alvinston, man. They said, all right, that's your best punch. And then they came out in game 2, which we attended live in Alvinston. And they punched back real hard with, I believe it was 7-2 final. And then we kind of thought at that point, okay, we'll see where this goes. And those young kids, they just don't know any better. They just keep going out and playing hard. And we're able to pick up victories in game 3 and 4 as well and eliminate the Squires in 4 games. Like we both did say before, we weren't 100% sure either way because they were fairly close in the standings. They play a much different style. Like Petrolia is a more like old school style, like you said. You know, these guys have been on the same team and same system for a while. Alvinston, I do believe, has more talent and youth in their lineup. And like you said, they were able to gel at the end of the season. And they're a team I would not want to be playing right now. They're playing in really good hockey right now. So kudos to the Killer Bees. I got actually a chance to meet with their owner at the Tillsonburg Game 4 in Strathroy, and he's really impressed with the turnout of the fans and the atmosphere that's been built around there. So it's going to be a challenge for the Irish going in there, man. It's going to be a great series.
I agree fully. It didn't go the way that I necessarily had thought it would, but in a 4 versus 5, it's usually up in the air, right? Those two teams are so close in proximity to the standings and also literally geographically speaking. So wasn't a lot of travel. And you know, both teams, they had their heavy hitters there. Both teams had their big guns. It's not like either team was missing guys. I think that honestly what it came down to for me as a fan who watched, I think it really came down to goaltending. I thought DeConing played really well, and I thought that Campbell and Parker, they weren't as sharp as they definitely would have liked to have been. I thought Campbell, especially in Game 3, let in a few shaky goals there. And if you're not able to get good goaltending in the postseason, it can really come back to bite you. And I think Petrolia has got to bounce back next year. Congrats to obviously a really good top 4 finish in your first year in the league. They made a seamless transition from the WOAA into the Washel. But, you know, I think that they're a little bit disappointed down there in Petrolia. I think that they felt they were the big brother, kind of how we feel with Delhi here in Tillsonburg. And, you know, I think that Alvinston, just like you said, they Petrolia is a dump and chase, get on the forecheck, hit you hard. They don't have a ton of really skilled guys, but they play well as a team, and they count on good goaltending and solid defense to win games. Alvinston's high flying, running gun, look for the stretch pass, put in work on the power play. And I think that matchup definitely favored Alvinston when you go back and look at, as I said, the little bit shaky goaltending. I don't agree with Petrolia not going to Parker in Game 4. I think that it could have been a little bit of a different story following the team this year, a little bit closer than even most teams. Because like you said, we had that connection. Me growing up in Petrolia for a little bit when I was a youngster, watching some of my first live men's hockey was the Squires. And, you know, I was intrigued by them. I wanted to see how a WOAA team, now OEHL team, could switch over to the Washel and how it would translate, because the Washel is a whole different system, right? Like a lot of these OEHL teams are still running the same group of guys. And it's camaraderie, it's local. You know, you have your same guys that have been there for years. And I wanted to see how that would translate. I thought Petrolia did a great job in their first year. But I think Alvinston in this postseason showed that the way that the Washel operates, you have to bring in skilled guys. You have to go and scout. You have to shop for guys coming out of the OHL, Junior A, Junior B, Junior C. You can't just count on your group of guys. You need to improve your team, because every year as we go forward, as more and more attention gets brought to this league, that I think the Washel is going to keep getting better skill-wise. So teams like Petrolia, they have the adjustments to make, and I think that we got to see really, like I said, the dividends of what the Washel has become, seeing, honestly, a couple years ago, absolutely terrible Alvinston team turn into now a semifinal performer, and I've been really impressed.
Yeah, they have definitely changed their lineup in the last couple of years, and you got to start somewhere, right? So, of course, you're probably going to draw a lot more local talent when you first branch out, and it doesn't mean you don't have enough local talent to put a competitive team on the ice, but I agree you got to kind of expand beyond there, because this is turning into a younger man's league, a high-skilled game. It's not Goonie, it's not Bush League. We have had a few games over the course of the season where you do see some of those ugly things come out, but for the most part, Washel is trying to create a skilled, fast, young, entertaining hockey league. And as I agree with you, Alvinston's on the right track. They seem to have a good roster in place. Hey, they beat us both times. I know that was during our 5-game losing streak, but they gave us all we could handle. They're going to be a tough opponent, man. Just like how Tilsonburg didn't want to be backing into the playoffs. On the opposite end of that, Alvinston is peaking going into the playoffs, playing good hockey. Their goaltender's found his groove. Like I said, I'm looking forward. I think the best 4 teams after watching the first round are the ones remaining. Definitely, there was no upsets, no surprises. The top 4 teams in Washington are now competing for the last 2 spots for the Super Cup. So
can't wait for it.
It's going to be awesome, man. Can't wait for. I think actually tonight there's a game.
Yeah,
so.
Tonight as we're recording here, Friday early afternoon, 8:30, puck drop at the Brook Alvinston Community Center, Community Complex. Excuse me. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be watching it here from Tilsonburg, and I advise anybody who wants to see some great hockey, log on to Sportfee and check it out, and that'll kind of lead us into where we're going here. We'll line up the 2 semifinal series, and then we'll send you guys off. Here we go. We talked about the 2 teams that flew into the playoffs, and they're going head-to-head. Alvinston went on a 4-game winning streak at the end of the year. They lost the game 1, obviously, to Petrolia, and then a 3-game winning streak since then. And then Stratford, they're on an 8-game winning streak right now, if you date back to the regular season. I believe their last loss was at home against Dunnville. They got spanked by Dunnville at home, 6-1, and they just said no, enough's enough. And so we got 2 of the hottest teams in the league, and they're about to collide. 1 versus 5. Game 1 in Alvinston, 2 and 3 in Stratford, 4 in Alvinston, 5 in Stratford, 6 in Alvinston, 7, obviously 5, 6, 7 if necessary. 7 would be back at the Allman. That honestly, I'm looking extremely forward to this series because Stratford last year, they were 11-1 in the playoffs. They lost 1 game. It was to Aaron in the first round. It was just one of those like Tilsonburg had in the first round this year. Just an egg. They laid an egg, and then they went on that run, miracle run, swept Elora, swept us. But this year, I think it's gonna be a whole different story because I think Alvinston, honestly, I think they have the talent to be able to not only give Stratford a fight, but I think they could win this series. I really do.
Yeah, it's tough to bet against the Irish, to be honest. Just watching them play. I mean, I've been impressed with them since the first time I saw them play. They came into our barn last year on student night when we had 600-700 people in the barn, and the kids and I, your siblings and I, like we were, used to Tilsonburg steamrolling everybody, and they walked in and just spanked us. And I remember saying to you, I'm like, man, this team is 4 lines deep, and you know what? They haven't really changed that much. They had a little bit of a sputter earlier in the season, but like you said, they're playing great right now. So I wouldn't bet against them, but if I were them, this is definitely an opponent that's going to give them everything they've got. I can tell just from watching Alvinston, I've got the privilege to see them play 4 or 5 times this season myself as well. Yeah. And like I said, they're young and they're talented and they just don't know any better, which is sometimes a good thing. Mm-hmm. You're not overthinking things. I mean, going into this series, everybody's probably going to put, Irish in the position as favorites because they're the defending champions. They're the number 1 seed, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, these guys are playing with house money. They don't know any better. They got talent. They got skill. They got a great goaltender. I am so looking forward to this series, mainly because in the Tilsonburg series, I get nervous because I'm a Thunder fan. So it's like nail biting time. I can watch this with no bias and just enjoy great hockey. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think I will. I mean, I don't want to go out on a bold prediction or anything, but like I said, it's hard to bet against the Irish right now, but I agree with you. This is going to be a great series. Wouldn't be shocked if it went the distance, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I think both of these 2 upcoming series could go the distance. But yeah, just on the Stratford Alvinston thought here. Again, Alvinston is young, fast, and as I said, right now they're playing their best hockey, which is what you need, right? We've seen NHL teams that have been President's Trophy winners, like Boston last year. They go into the postseason kind of on this lull, and what happens? They go up 3-1 in the first round and lose the series because they were in this lull, right? And for these 2 teams, Alvinston and Stratford, they're playing fantastic hockey right now. They're playing as a team. Both of these 2, they have great power plays. Both of them can score shorthanded. Rogers and I talked about it yesterday. I was featured on his podcast this week. The Washel podcast, check it out over at Washel Podcast on Facebook, as well as here on YouTube. But no, we both said it that both these two teams, at least over the last few weeks, when it seems like when they want to score, they score. And that's going to be an interesting matchup here because Zach Weir, he's played a really good brand of hockey this year in net for Stratford. Jamie's basically named him the starter. He showed that through the last few weeks of the regular season and going into the postseason as well. He basically said, this guy's our starter. He had a great regular season. Nolan DeKoning is the same thing, where they had a couple good goalies in Alvinston, and he really earned that starting gig as we headed into the postseason. He got really hot near the end of the season. He shut out Tilbury in Tilbury 2-0. Like I said yesterday on Raji's podcast, out-dueling Polidori, that's hard to do. He did it. He came into Tillsonburg, only gave up 2 goals on nearly 50 shots. His team got the triple overtime win. And then, of course, the first round matchup, he, outside of the first game, was red hot. And so I think this could really come down to a situation where who capitalizes on their power plays and also who doesn't get themselves into too much penalty trouble, because Stratford is the most penalized team in the league. I know after talking to Raji and Brian Hawley a few times about it, Stratford can play a little dumb sometimes when it comes to these situations, right? And when you have guys like Calvin Thompson and the Nigueras and stuff like that, I've even seen Brulot and Leach and some of these guys take dumb penalties. Can Jamie get them playing a brand of hockey where they're not going to take those dumb penalties? Because I feel like, unlike Alora, who does have a talented power play, don't get me wrong, Utley and McCormack and those guys, the way Elvis is playing right now at home tonight, game 1, if they get into a little bit of penalty trouble, speaking of Stratford, I think Alvinston could put it to them. And if Alvinston takes game 1, it's going to be tough sledding for the Irish going forward. But again, I think it's probably going to go at least 6 games. But like you, I find it very difficult to bet against the Irish. They've been a dominant team in this league since it founded, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I will definitely go my prediction for the series that I'll say Stratford's going to win it in 6 games. But I think Alvinston will get a couple, and they'll take that next step forward. And hey, if you're Alvinston and you're listening, go out and prove us wrong then. That's what we're going to say, because we're Tillsonburg fans. We're not big fans of the Irish. They don't like us. We don't like them. Tillsonburg's top 2 rivals, just in terms of teams that they play tough against and they don't like each other, I give it to Stratford and Tilbury. And it looks like that could potentially be our next 2 opponents, but we'll touch on that after. Alvinston, if you're listening and you want to get motivated, then use what we've said, predicting Stratford to win the series as motivation, and go out there and kick some butt. We'll see what happens, but that's where I'm sitting, Dad. What are you going to predict?
Yeah, that's like you said. It's our opinion. Everybody's got one, right?
Yeah,
it is what it is. But no, I agree. I'm going to take Stratford in 6 games. I think Alvinston will get a couple. I just find it hard to bet against them. Touching to your point earlier, though, one area where I could see Stratford struggle, like you said, is they play a high intense game, very physical game, and sometimes that does lead you over the edge, and it can get you into penalty trouble. And this is a team, they've got some real good snipers on there. I wouldn't want to be putting them on the power play more than I have to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's Stratford's game. So Jamie doesn't want to take that out of them, but he has to kind of keep them in check, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I still, like I said, prove me wrong. And hey, if Alvinston makes it to the finals, that's awesome. More power to you. My opinion, and not just because we're father-son, I just watch hockey a lot, and I could see Alvinston getting a few, but I see Stratford coming out in the end, representing in the championship series.
Yep. Same here. I think that we were pretty spot on with the predictions in the first round. I think we'll hopefully continue that here in the second round. That leads us into our final talking point of today's show, the rematch, as everybody keeps calling it. That's a phrase I coined, I guess, talking to Andrew Rogers before I went on his show. We were just talking off the mic, and I said, here goes the rematch, and then that turned into this YouTube video, and that's going pretty hot right now with Washoe fans across the entire province. People down in Tilbury are loving it. People in Tillsonburg are loving it. Players are loving it. Fans everywhere. That's kind of what this is the rematch. Because if anybody remembers last year, and it's kind of hard to forget, Tillsonburg played Tilbury. Tilbury, the number 1 seed. Tillsonburg, the 4 seed. And Tillsonburg struggled in the first 3 games, to say the least. Alvinston, excuse me. Stratford, there we go again. I'm naming every team except the team I'm supposed to name. Tilbury comes out, wins game 1 in overtime, takes game 2 and 3 fairly convincingly. We come back to Tillsonburg for game 4. And Tillsonburg played this brand of hockey I hadn't seen them play all year. Last year was this, not desperation, but kind of played a little bit loose. You know what? They knew we're down 3-0. You know what? We have everything to lose, but at the same time, we have nothing to lose, right? Tilbury's the 1 seed. Let's just go win a game and see what happens. They won that game 5-3. It was an intense game, and there was some antics. There was some scraps. But we got the first win, and when we got that first win under our belt, Tillsonburg went on to win the following 3 contests, including 2 of those 3 games in Tilbury, game 5 and 7. And Dad, what better way to have the second round start for us as Tillsonburg fans and for those down in Tilbury than to have this rematch, reignite this rivalry. And we talked about it in the regular season. Tillsonburg and Tilbury went to each other's buildings once, October 28th in Tilbury, and the mid-January contest in Tillsonburg. And Tillsonburg brought 13 guys or 12 guys to Tilbury. Tilbury brought 11 or 12 to Tillsonburg. We have not seen these two teams at full strength play each other, and we're going to get to see that on Saturday, Dad. I am really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, myself as well, of course. That series kind of made me just fall in love with the Thunder, seeing the effort and the, like you said, just coming back from 3-0. I've got to see that once with my professional team as well. The Flyers did that to Boston a few years back, and getting to see that live in person here in Tillsonburg, it was quite the experience. And like we talked about before in the podcast, if these two teams face each other, which they are now, that Tilbury would have a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth. I mean, nobody wants to be the 1 seed, be up 3-0, and then end up having the lead evaporate and lose the series ultimately, right? So I'm sure they've been kind of thinking about that all year as they've been playing hockey. I know it's a new year, you let things go, but you want to build on your experiences in the past and try to rectify that, right? So I'm sure they're looking forward to playing us. I'm sure we're looking forward to playing them. There's no love lost between either one of these teams. Both teams possess 4 lines of talent, 6 good defensemen, and good goaltending. It's going to be an awesome series. It's like I said, as a home fan, it's nerve-wracking more. It's a little bit harder to watch because you have the investment in the team there, and then the guys and things of that nature. But I'm so looking forward to the series tomorrow night. Be there, be square. The drum's going to be rocking.
Yep.
Round 2. Let's go Thunder. I want no complaints about my voice was gone for like a week because of the last game. And everybody congratulated me that I kept the tempo going, but I want 600 people behind me doing the same thing. I want Tilbury to be shaken out of the building tomorrow night.
Yep.
I want us to go and make a statement in game 1 and set the tone for this series.
Yeah, for sure, Dad. We got to get the energy up. Tillsonburg, last year it was the Tilbury series that really got the guys on the ice and all fans alike realizing, like, wow, this environment at the Thunderdome, which was a phrase we coined this year, but last year, just when you go to Tillsonburg in the playoffs, it's a tough place to play. And all the way through the Stratford series, even despite obviously what ended up happening as the final outcome, we were loud, we were proud, we were on our feet. Everybody in that building, there were points in that Stratford series, the championship last year, where I remember talking to Mike Hawley and Bill Ryan, who run the Thunder. They were up at the wall, up underneath the Queen's picture there in the arena, and they would hear us go, "Let's go Thunder," and then they'd hear the crowd react, and then a few seconds later you'd hear the "Let's go Irish," and their people would react, and to them it felt, I remember Mike saying, it felt like a European hockey arena where the crowd is on their feet and you got both fan bases going back and forth. Let's do that same thing here in this series, because we know we've heard some rumblings that Tilbury potentially acquired a drum of their own. So yeah, thanks for stealing our thunder, no pun intended. But I love it. I love it. That's what I want to hear. I want to see things like this happen. I want to see this league get crazy. I think you got the 4 best fan bases in the Washel now remaining. I think Elvinston's going to be loud tonight. I think Tillsonburg's going to be loud tomorrow night. I think Tilbury's going to be loud on Sunday as well. And I think Stratford, they'll bring their people out tomorrow for game 2. But yeah, Dad, just speaking of the actual hockey part of the series, it's kind of hard to know what to expect. Tilbury's going to have the motivation of last year and all the crap that happened to them. They had a rough regular season this year at points. They still finished top 3. But there were periods of the season where, they were losing games they should have won. I think they acknowledge that. I think they're aware of that, obviously. They're going to have revenge on the mind. And for Tillsonburg, I think the approach has to be come in calm, come in relaxed, come in and play your brand of hockey, the brand of hockey that Coach Derek Partlow has put on this team. And I think if you can play very similar to how you played in Game 4 and Game 3 against the Strathroy Jets, I think good things can happen. Game 3, great defensive game, defensive clinic. They allowed one goal, and it was a fluke across the blue line. Buddy came in, Stapleton, and just took a wrist shot, and Raymond wasn't 100% ready for it. It was basically like a dump-in, and it went in. Outside of that, Razor played solid. The defense played solid. The offense was great. In Game 4, why I say that about Game 4, I know it was, pretty nerve-wracking, the back and forth and everything, but the power play, dude, it was one thing we talked about in depth during the game and after the game. Tillsonburg's power play was elite in the last 2 games of that series, snapping that puck around. It was something that they had been lacking for the last month of the season. They got it figured out. The power play was moving that puck, and if you're going to beat Tilbury, there's going to be lots of penalties in this series because these two teams don't like each other. It's the Washel. It's going to happen. Depending on who's officiating, could be lots of penalties. But what we know is that both these two teams possess really good power plays. Now Tillsonburg's power play, I can finally actually say that, is back to having a good power play because they went on quite an offer for a bit there. I think that just very similar to the Stratford Alvinson series, it's going to come down to discipline. It's going to come down to goaltending. And I think that it's going to come down to whoever plays the game with the most level head. Because if Tilbury gets into this revenge mindset, they're going to try to lay that big hit early, might get them out of position. And if you're Tillsonburg, you don't want to hang on what happened last year. Remember, this is a new year. Go out there, play calm, play your game. And I think it could lead to successful things for the Thunder and potentially a rematch with the Irish for the Super Cup. But we're going to have to leave it on the ice because, who knows? Anything can happen. So,
yeah, I agree. Tillsonburg and Tilbury, like we said, when they faced each other in the regular season, unfortunately, they're far proximity from one another, so they didn't really have both have full rosters. It'll be interesting to see tomorrow night what they actually look like. They'll probably have a better idea of how to gauge it because I know when all 4 lines show up for both teams, they're both very talented teams.
Yeah.
Like you, I understand like playoff hockey. Looking back even to Series 1, Game 2, we were flat, but we were also overly emotional. Like you said, you got to be emotional, but you got to play at that line and not quite cross over it, right? So I think that's going to be an X factor for both of these teams, not just because of last year, but just the way they play the game. They play on the edge or close to it, right? So as the penalties rack up or the big hits or whatever, you got to see which team's going to kind of like build off that and not allow it to put them over the edge and end up in penalty trouble, end up out of position, giving up bad goals and stuff. I think this series does have the potential to go down to the wire because they're both fairly similar teams. Like in that way, they're built on speed, built on playmaking ability. Lots of different guys contribute offensively to both teams.
Yeah.
I can't wait, man. I'm so looking forward to it. Playoff hockey's the best.
Oh, yeah.
And to be the best, you got to beat the best.
Yeah.
So, these teams are very similar in the standings, very similar style-wise. I think it's going to be whoever comes out of this is definitely going to be battle-tested going into the finals, man.
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah.
Similar to the Stratford and Alvinson series. It's going to be a barn burner, man. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. I think if the Thunder can play the way they're capable of, and they've shown us for long stretches in the season. I've said it multiple times. I'll say it again. I know I'm biased. I live in Tillsonburg. But this is the strongest, deepest team in the league.
Yes.
If they can play with that intensity, not go over the edge, and just have each other's backs and continue to build on what they've built in the first round victory over Strathroy, I think they're going to be a dangerous team, man.
Yep.
Let's go Thunder, man. I firmly believe in my boys. And, going out on a limb here, but Tillsonburg's going to win this series.
Yep. I'm with Dad on that one. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here with the Thunder hat and predict a loss, but genuinely speaking, I think that series against Strathroy opened a lot of the eyes of the Tillsonburg fans to remember that this is, as you said, one of the deepest and best teams in this league, if not the best and most deep team in the league. They started the season 16-2-1, and I get the old saying, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But you don't start a season at this level of hockey, 16-2-1, without being a damn good hockey team. And a lot of injuries piled up, and unfortunately, Colton Wyzek, we have word that he's more than likely out for the rest of the season. He had upper body injury sustained in Strathroy in Game 2. Of course, we get that 5-0 loss and lose one of our most promising young defensemen. But you know what? Next man up mentality. And Kyle Brzezinski stepped into that spot. Mike Finley came in Game 3. Those two played exceptionally well together. And Big Finn, we love you, Big Finn. Rumbling up and down the ice. I love to see it.
Taking care of business.
Yeah,
I thought hockey player.
I thought Big Taps came in Game 3, and Taps had a great game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he fired that one shot. He showed us, you know what, this is playoff hockey, right? And we need guys like that to step up here in the postseason and dominate. That's what we need against a team like Tilbury. Is you can't just be 50%. Every puck battle, you have to be 100%. When you have guys tied up on the wall, you have to win that battle, offensive zone and defensive zone. Block a lot of shots. You know that every little detail of the postseason becomes magnified. Every series you advance further. Well, now we're into the semifinal. This is the final four, the top four. This is the showdown, the final countdown, whatever you want to call it. And it all comes down to this. I got Tillsonburg winning this series in either 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, I think it will go at least 6 myself, but like I said, let's go Thunder. We're taking this home.
Yep, I agree. I think there's no better way to put it than if we play the way we can and the way that we're capable of. And if guys like Kudo behind me there, Thompson, and these other guys that we've counted on all year can step it up, and if the youngsters like Baker and Forsyth can really get their legs going, we add this factor that we didn't really have last year, and that's the depth and speed of these youngsters that we brought into the lineup. The rumbling of guys like Brzezinski and Taps are going to be out there, and Big Finn laying the body, and I'm really looking forward to it. You add the defensive prowess of a guy like Jamie Forsland, and the size and ability of a guy like Jack Van Boekel. This is going to be excellent, man, and I don't think Tilbury's ready for what we're going to bring to them tomorrow. I think that this is going to be a get out there and get her rolling right away. I predict Game 1's going to go in the favor of Tillsonburg, Dad, and I think a guy named Mitch Fitzmaurice, Fitzy, I think he's going to have a big game because Fitzy seems to be a playoff performer, Dad, and he obviously missed the final almost 10 games of the regular season. I think it was actually 10 games that he missed, and he's come out of the postseason gates flying, and I see big things for Fitzy tomorrow night in Tillsonburg. I'm so excited. That's all I can say.
Yeah, the 4 lines they ran out in the last game in Stratford was Strathroy. Like, that's the Thunder, man. You got Robbie, you got, Rebs, Fitzy, Cootsy, Tomer. Like, this is a good hockey team, man. These guys have energy. They go. I'm with you, boys. Like, I promise you guys tomorrow night, 110% from number 7. You guys are the top 6 on the team. In the crowd, number 7, we're going 110.
Seventh man.
Let's all 7 of us put together that 110% effort, and let's get a victory in Game 1 to start the series out on the right foot, boys.
Yep, let's get her fired up, Thunder Nation. Thank you so much for joining us today on Thunder Hour Podcast. That was round 1 recap. We will be back with you guys concluding matters of the second round. So when the Thunder series comes to an end and the Stratford Elviston series comes to an end, we'll touch base with you guys again. Thanks a lot for being patient with us and being there with us along the ride, Thunder Nation. You guys are the best. We're so proud to be part of it, and we can't wait for tomorrow night. I'm going to run a graphic after this showing you the entire second round schedule, and what better way to get her started, Dad, than on 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's go Thunder! Woo! Woo!